I tell you something a little bit more about the Protestant church in the Netherlands, give you some context. We have over 1,500 congregations, 1.6 million members. That's 9% of the Dutch population. But they are decreasing, and really, I think really fast. It also depends on what area of the Netherlands you live. We have a Bible belt. There are still big churches, sometimes over 1,000 church members, 1,000 people in a service on a Sunday. But big parts of the country who are not part of the Bible belt, they have like, yeah, maybe 30, 40 people in a Sunday service. But we also see a lot of new initiatives pop up, and some of them we call Pioneers Places. And the specific thing about Pioneers Place is that I'll come to that later. That's still in the presentation. I'll tell you something about the motivation to start the Pioneers movement, and that was back in 2005. That in 2004, the Protestant church started actually out of 3 different denominations, 2 Reformed churches and 1 Lutheran church. And together they became the Protestant Church of the Netherlands in 2004. So together we are a really young church, but separately we are a church who exists for over a few hundreds of years, really old. But in 2005, the Protestant church started with the Pioneers movement, and we had 2 main goals. One of them was that more people would discover the joy and the value of the gospel. So we noticed that a lot of people from our society were not connected to local churches, and they wouldn't connect to the churches in our current form. They will never do that because there was a big gap between how they live their life and how the church culture was, the church culture. So that's one of the main goals. But the other one was, how does the Pioneers movement, how could it inspire renewal within the Protestant church? And when we prepared this meeting, the second main goal was the question that was asked me, to tell something more about that. So this presentation is about how does this Pioneers movement inspire renewal within the Protestant church? And maybe something short about Pioneers Places. We always say it's important to tune into the context, to work from based on faith. And as a team, it's important to talk about what you believe and what you want to share with other people in that context. And also, we aim for a sustainable community. So not everything what we call missional is also a Pioneers place, or can be. We try to be a sustainable community, and that's also what I try to explain in my presentation, the last one, about my own Pioneers experience. I ask myself the question, how does this build a community? How can we involve new people? How can it be sustainable? How can we connect different groups to each other? And not just organize one event with Christmas and one in the summer, and that's it. And then we could be visible as a church, but there was no community building. And that's really important for the Pioneers Places. Where are we now? So that's 15 years later. We have 147 Pioneers Places who have started, and 14 of them have stopped. They have different reasons for that. We talked about it last time a little bit, but most of the time it's because of the tension between the Pioneers Place and the supporting church, the supporting existing local church, or because they tried to build a sustainable community, but it didn't work. And for some groups, it's really hard to build a community, because we like to build a community, but sometimes the group we try to reach out to, they don't. 52 people are involved in a Pioneers Place monthly. We did some research, and this is, how do you say it? The average of the Pioneers Places. And 182 people are locally, incidentally involved, so less than once a month. You can say about they come to events or they come to the Christmas service. So that's a bigger group, but the average is that 52 people are involved in a Pioneers Place, and 59% of those people were never involved in a church. So that's we try to we were happy when we could say that 50% of the people was not involved in church, and it's 59%. So we were really glad about that. But you also need a few Christians to make the community possible, who are involved, who organize, who start a team, etc. What have we learned so far? I told you about this. Letting a new church emerge will take 7 to 12 years. And when we started, our funding and our training was not built on that principle. So we had to change it. And for now, it's for a Pioneers Place possible to get some support at the start and get some support when the Pioneers Place is going on for 10 years. And for those 10 years, they can also go to different trainings. They can use our articles, our website. We have a WhatsApp group. We have a Facebook group where they can ask questions. Sometimes we do some research where they are part of. We organize symposiums to share something of our experiences. And the funding, for now, it's available for the first 6 years. And from year 7 and on, they have to they have to organize their own funding. But we started funding for only 3 years, but that was too short a period. Now, what else we've learned is that working in a team is very important. I also told you something about it last time. It's more sustainable when you have a paid academic pastor. Then it can be really expensive. So for some small communities, it's not possible to have an own pastor who get paid for the whole job. We try to do a lot with volunteers, and it's also important for the relationships. When the pastor maybe moves on to another job, the volunteers are still there, the local pioneers team, and the relationships will still be there. And that's really important when you are building a community. And we also made a transformation from a geographical focus on one area. You see that in my story, or you saw that, to a more sociological focus. So maybe on one age group, or intercultural, or you can maybe some same hobbies, like artistic people or sportive people. And when we talk about existing churches, we call them houses. They are safe and solid, but there are a lot of regulations. They are big and not really flexible. And the Pioneers Places, we see them as tents. They are flexible, they are cheaper, they are open. When you're on a camping site, you can talk easy to other people. But after a while, a tent is not really sustainable, and you need some tiny houses. And what we try to do is to help to Pioneers Places. They start as a tent, but we try to move them into a more sustainable residence, and we call that the tiny houses. They are still flexible. They are a lot cheaper than a house, low maintenance, but yeah, a little bit more pleasant than a tent. A pioneer's place, pioneering, is not a phase you can be in forever. And the step to a house is sometimes too big. So that's why we are looking for something in between. Not all the regulations, all the when we have a church in the Netherlands, we have to have at least 3 governing bodies, an academically educated pastor for at least 1.5 days a week, and those regulations and that culture is sometimes not possible for pioneers' places. They cannot make it work. And they also try to be flexible, try to connect with new people, and that's easier when when you are organized in a flexible way. So we were looking for something new. How do we organize the pioneers' places, but also help them to mature without all the regulations and without losing the flexibility? And we also had a lot of theological questions. What is a church? What are the essentials? The minimal essentials? Do we need a building? Are elders, do you need elders or deacons? Do they have to be a member of the church, or can they be part of the community without being a member? Who can baptize? If you have a church or a team with only volunteers, how do you organize a baptize or a supper? And those were really important questions. And in 2017, the Synod ordered a process to tackle these organizational and theological questions. And it was a process of 2 years. And the main goal was to create a lighter framework and for maturing the pioneers' places. And that was in 2019. And now we have that lighter framework. And in a few years, in 2024, we will have an evaluation if it's working, the new framework, and then we can choose the next direction. And the framework, it's about the 10 essentials of being church. I'm not going to share or talk about all of them. Here you can see them. It's about what do we believe. It's also about the missional and diagonal ministry, but also practical about how many, here you see at point 5, that we at least need 10 adult members who are committed to the church and responsibility for their own policy and finances. So we had like the 10 essentials of being church, and that's the way how we try to help pioneers' places from being organized as a tent to mature into a tiny house without all the regulations. So these are all the regulations there are for them. And we had the first applications of pioneers' places who are maturing and want to become a tiny house. One of the main goals was, how does this movement influence the existing church? And what we see is that we had a research among existing churches who support a local pioneers' place, and they said, we think more about our own identity. Who do we want to be as a church? Why do local pioneers places, we see they can reach out to other people. Why is it not working for us? What can we do to be more attractional for people from outside the church? So those questions, they came up in the existing church because they were supporting a pioneer's place. And also they were thinking more about the external communications, about the websites. Is it easy to find what we believe? And is it easy to find information about our church and our activities? What we also see is that the Protestant church is becoming more diverse. We have a lot of intercultural and interdenominational pioneers places. And we used to be a very white, male-dominated church. But now we have, I think, maybe 35% of the pioneers places are intercultural. So we get connected with a lot of other churches, other cultures. And yeah, they also bring us a lot. How they experience their own faith. And also a lot of younger people, they joined. What we also see is that we have a platform of church planting in the Netherlands. I think we make that platform possible. We organize it as the Protestant Church of the Netherlands, but a lot of other organizations and denominations, they joined. So nationally, we organized this movement with, I think, maybe 15 denominations and organizations right now. But locally, there are more churches involved. Sometimes people, they do it as a person. They are part of the Catholic Church, but they say, I want to join. So in some teams, there are Catholic people involved, even when it's really hard to work together with the Catholic Church nationally, because when we talk about what is church, for the Catholic people, it's church when you have a priest and I don't know the translation, but a holy building. And for us, that's not one of the 10 essentials of church. You don't have to have a priest or a holy building. You can come together with volunteers outside. And so that makes it really hard to work together nationally with the Catholic Church. But a lot of other denominations that, working together nationally is possible. And I think that's really, really nice that we can come together as a church. And what we also see is this vision. It came up. We call it the Mosaic of Churches. And I can read the text for you, what is on the slide. All these existing and new forms of being church together in all their diversity from a mosaic with stones in different shapes, dimensions, and colors. Seen from a distance, they form a colorful image of Christ's love for people and for our Dutch society. And we are hoping that all these stones, newer and older, will continue to let people experience God's love in the Netherlands. So because of the pioneers movement, we had two different ways of being church. We had the existing church and we had the pioneers places. But some of the new initiatives, they didn't fit in one of those malls. And what we saw is that a big monastic movement started, a movement where a lot of rituals and elements of the Catholic traditions were revived. And they did a lot of retreats and meditations. But also we have a lot of messy churches. And so what we see is that a lot of different ways of being church are popping up. And they form together the Mosaic of Churches. And for now, we just finished a reorganization as a church. And we will focus on that mosaic. So besides the existing church and the pioneers places, we will give room to other ways of being church, so that everyone in an area can find something where they can fit in and explore something of God's love in the Netherlands.